تحياتي للجميع. راح نبلش خلال دقائق إن شاء الله. جيهان كله تمام؟ آه،
السلام عليكم دكتور. تمام، كيف الحال؟
سلامات سلامات، شو أخبارك؟ إن شاء الله بخير.
تمام الحمد لله.
الحمد لله.
هي حاضر، هلا بدخلوا الطلاب بس شوي بدخلوا بالضبط لأنهم.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We'll give them a few minutes and we can get started إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
موسى تفضل، عندك سؤال؟
يعطيك العافية دكتور. لا فيش عندي ولا أي سؤال، بس حبيت أسلم عليك.
الله يسلمك. تحياتي إن شاء الله. هلا we'll introduce myself and we'll get this started إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
Okay يا جماعة, let's get started and الموجودين يعني would need to suffice at this point. المفروض إنه الميتينج is open, um, so that anybody who wants to join can join actually. بداية خليني أعرفكم بنفسي. أنا اسمي محمد حرز الله. مدير معهد علوم الأعصاب في جامعة القدس. قبل حوالي 17 سنة كنت في مكانكم طالب سنة ثالثة في كلية الطب في جامعة القدس. ولكن حاليا بالإضافة إلى شغلي في جامعة القدس I'm an assistant professor at Rutgers University in the Center for Molecular and Behavioral Neuroscience. I'm a visiting scientist at Harvard Medical School in the Global Health Department. I also have some function in the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy. بشتغل في مجال ال AI in particular as an AI scientist خاصة في الاندستري. سعدت بلقائكم جميعا. وإن شاء الله يعني we'll have fun together trying to explore neuroscience and talk about neuroscience. ممكن بس يعني أوضح لكم how this process is going to be run as we're moving forward. الماتيريال راح تكون على شكل book chapters. We'll go through basically most of the material in the form of going through the actual chapter. I don't do slides, I don't do notes. This is your job, guys. بناء على اللي بنعمله هنا في الجامعات الأمريكية as well. You're free to take any notes that you want. مسألة مهمة جدا بالنسبة للمحاضرة is please be present. أي حدا معني إنه يأخذ المادة اللي راح تخليه ينجح في الامتحان be present. I'm not gonna write questions from Mars. I want you to be available, to be present, to actually attend the lectures أو على الأقل تقدر تسمعوا lectures. لأنه if you really care about passing the exam, this is what you need to do. اللي بده يتميز ويجيب 100 بده يقرأ. And most importantly مش راح أحاسبكم على إشي ما غطيته يعني. That's actually something I want you to be fully aware of. That's how things are going to happen, and this is the system that we have been adopting since I started teaching في كلية الطب this course. بناء على هذا الكلام, this is how things are going to happen. ابذلوا جهدكم و hopefully try to enjoy the experience and try to get the best out of it. The way that we're going to run this is we will be talking for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, taking a break and talking for another 45 minutes. لأنه حسب توقيت رمضان I'll try to finish at the 1.5 hour mark so that you guys are free to go and do whatever you want. فبناء عليه we'll see exactly how things happen, how things unfold. ورجاء اسألوا. If you have any questions during the lecture, stop me and I'll be more than happy to assist you with the concepts that you're trying to understand. الشيء المهم في neuroscience is not about really memorizing the details, it's about understanding the concepts. وبالتحديد يعني مشان برضو تكون الأمور واضحة من البداية, this is what I'm going to ask about in the exam. I want to see that you understand the concepts that we talked about, not really memorize the text or memorize the details and so on. So بناء عليه, any questions before we jump into the material? Okay. So today we'll be discussing sleep and dreaming, sleep as a system. We'll be talking about the different theories about sleep, the different theories about sleep architecture, the different regulators of sleep, and then in the first half, and then talk about the different neural circuits that regulate sleep. وبناء عليه راح نتحرك للحديث عن particular aspects of sleep disorders that are related to the physiology of sleep. شهد تفضل يا شهد. شهد, go ahead. أنا مش سامعك. I can't hear you. Okay, Shahd, if you fix your microphone problem, please feel free to ask again. Okay, so بناء على هذا الكلام, we'll talk about this particular topic, which is sleep. Before we move forward, anybody knows what is sleep? To the person who asked about the PDFs, yes. Please put your names, Jama'ah, so that I can know who I'm talking to in the chat. That would be very helpful. Yes, you will receive all of the PDFs as a downloadable folder with recordings راح تكون داخله as well. So don't worry about that. Of course, you will get the PDFs and all of the reading material as well as the recordings of a lecture. So بناء على هذا الكلام, what is sleep? Who wants to define sleep for me? No answers? Okay. So sleep is all about the state of rejuvenation. Actually, the reality is, لحد الآن in the field of physiology, we don't know exactly what sleep is. You know, it's not a a particularly well answered domain in terms of what is sleep. لحد الآن احنا بنحاول نعرف السليب لحد الوقت الحاضر عن طريق ال physiological architecture of sleep. And based on that, we try to understand the different segmentations of sleep. ولكن إذا أي حدا بده يجي يسأل من ناحية philosophical definitions of defining the identity of sleep, we really don't know what sleep is. And if you want to make it a little bit more complicated, نحاول نربط السليب مع consciousness. When you're asleep, are you conscious? Are you unconscious or the subconscious? Do you know the answer? So Basil is telling us is to say it's the way that the body uses to shut down its conscious activities. So you're unconscious when you sleep, Basil? Maybe you guys, if you want to answer, unmute yourself. That makes it a lot easier. مين بده يجاوب Basil? Is it correct? Are you unconscious when you sleep? If you're startled, can you be brought back to consciousness or not? So Mohammed is telling us that actually you're nearly unconscious. Well, yeah. So in a lot of resources, people say that you're not unconscious when you're asleep, okay? It's not an actual permanent loss of consciousness, or okay, the permanent loss of consciousness is actually the ultimate loss of consciousness is death, basically, in this kind of context. But a lot of people say that actually it's not a manifestation of unconsciousness when you're asleep, okay? Because you can wake up, you can be startled by particular responses, okay, or particular environmental stimuli, all right? So that's actually the logic behind it. So that being said, it's a like partial loss of consciousness. It's not unconsciousness, all right? That being said, it becomes really complex, you know. طيب شو النوم? What is sleep based on that? Is it actually loss of consciousness? Apparently it's not. Is it partial loss of consciousness? Which part of consciousness is actually lost? So actually that's actually the problem with this, because in order to understand sleep, we need to understand consciousness and which parts of consciousness are being lost in order to actually accomplish what we call sleep, which is this rejuvenating state that, you know, countless scholars throughout history actually spent significant time studying. بس بناء على اللي بنعرفه احنا حاليا, what is sleep? مبني على ايش؟ مبني على particular architecture that is acquired through, you know, trying to understand, you know, particular aspects of the physiological activities of the body. All right. So that being said, رنا بتسأل is the CNS is inactive؟ على العكس تماما. The CNS in particular parts of it becomes much more active actually. And that actually is something that you will see during the discussion. إنه في بعض some of the parts of the brain, such as the thalamus, becomes oscillating. Oscillating means and actually kind of bursting in terms of neuronal activity, and it fires up to 400 hertz, يعني 400 مرة في الثانية, during sleep. That being said, apparently it's much more active than when it's awake. So it's not necessarily a state of inactivity. It is a state of inactivity for the muscles, potentially, for other systems, but not necessarily for the brain. Okay? So بناء عليه, let's talk about the different stages of sleep, and let's use this really nice figure. I appreciate this figure because it puts basically everything that you need to know about what is it called, sleep architecture, in the same place. So زي ما انتم شايفين هنا, this is actually wakefulness. This part اللي هو اللي ملون بالأصفر هنا على الفيجر on the top panel is wakefulness. So do we get into REM sleep أول ما ننام, we get into REM sleep ولا non-REM sleep؟ شو الفرق بين الREM والnon-REM sleep؟ إذا REM sleep is actually rapid eye movement, and then I would love for you to answer with voice, but if that's difficult, then you will do it on my own, and then actually we'll wait for you guys to interact more, inshallah. But if you want to more participate with voice, that's much easier than the chat. مشان ما نضيعش وقت كثير يعني, so that we can stop on time. أو أنا مش سامع اللي بحكي يعني, basically, if anybody is trying to talk. So let's see what happens there. So بناء على هذا الكلام, we go directly from wakefulness to non-REM sleep. الفرق بين الREM والnon-REM sleep is REM is rapid eye movement. How do we detect rapid eye movement? What is moving the eyes rapidly? It's ocular muscles, actually, basically. They're moving, okay? طب كيف, how do we detect eye movement? We use a measure that we call EOG, electrooculogram, okay? بالإضافة لهذا الكلام, the major recording is what we call EEG, electroencephalogram, okay? بالإضافة لهذا الكلام, we record an MEG signal, which is I'm sorry, not MEG, EMG. MEG is magnetoencephalogram, but we're talking about electromyogram here, muscle activity. We look at the heart rate, we look at the respiratory rate, as well as the penile erection, which actually is, all of these functions are affected by the different phases of sleep. So as you can see here, in this particular figure, with wakefulness, you have a lot of fast oscillatory activity on the EEG. Let me see if I have, it's right here actually. It's a shame that actually we don't have this on top of the other figure. So as you can see, this is wakefulness. It starts with wakefulness. Then it transitions into the 4 stages of non-REM sleep, okay? And forget about REM sleep. It should be actually the 5th stage of sleep. It's the last of the ultradian rhythm. We call it ultradian rhythm. We'll talk about it in a second. All right? So بناء على هذا الكلام, احنا بنكون صاحيين. Once you start, you put your head on the pillow to try to go to sleep, you transition to the 1st stage of non-REM sleep. Usually they call it shallow sleep, okay? بصير شوية decrease, as you can see here. There is still eye movement, okay? Head movement starts, actually, the muscle movement starts kind of going down to some extent. And then basically, as you can see, the heart rate starts going down. في الستيج الأولى من ال non-REM sleep, it's not that significantly different from wakefulness. It is lower. It starts getting much lower, actually. And it plummets, it becomes at the lowest level in the 4th stage of non-REM sleep, which is what we call, in parts of the 3rd and the 4th, we call deep sleep, okay? So the deepest is the 4th stage of non-REM sleep. Before that, it descends من الستيج الأولى لحد الستيج الرابع. طيب شو اللي بيميز كل واحدة من هذه الستيجز؟ So as you can see here, stage 2, 3, a lot of the times actually they combine them together, although there are some architectural differences between them. ولكن اللي بيميزهم basically is the prevalence of what we call sleep spindles or K complexes. So اللي انتوا شايفينه هذا is an EEG, okay? So شو يعني sleep spindle? It's a a block of high speed, okay, oscillatory activity during the EEG recording. Well, K spindle is this large, amplitude wave that you see on the EEG. These things are seen actually in stages 2 and 3 of the non-REM sleep. And basically, this is how we can identify these particular stages of sleep on the EEG. In stage 4, the deep sleep aspect of the non-REM sleep is, dominated by what we call delta waves. Okay, delta waves. الدلتا waves هو عبارة عن oscillatory activity. Okay, oscillations. The frequency تبعتهم is between 0.5 to 2 Hertz. بنشوفهم على ال EEG. كيف بنحدد ال oscillatory activity؟ يعني let me just zoom this in and examine your ability to see this, guys. How do we know that we have delta waves here? مين بده يجاوبني؟ يلا يا جماعة شدوا حيلكم. عارف الدنيا رمضان وصايمين وتعبانين. أنا just it's my morning as well, so رغد بتحكي لنا lowest frequency highest amplitude. We agree on this. We know that it's the lowest frequency. How do you want to measure it here? فجيني كيف how do you want to measure delta على الفيجر هنا. So that I think you need to open your mic. رغد or anybody else who wants to answer. Can you unmute yourself? اللي بيقدر يجاوب السؤال please raise the hand or do something. Okay, رغد, you want to answer? Well, actually, I ask. So let me see. I tried to ask people to unmute, but it doesn't work. So I don't know. Maybe. بس Musa, actually, when he spoke earlier, he managed to speak. Okay, فراس بيسأل عن شو نجاوب. فراس احنا بنطلع على ال stage 4 of non-REM sleep EEG recording. سؤال هنا, how do we so Ragad has no idea. Okay, we'll see if anybody has an idea. It's okay, Ragad. We'll see now. السؤال is, how do we measure delta waves بناء على ال EEG recording اللي شايفينه in front of you هنا in stage 4. أي حد عنده فكرة؟ ولا نستسلم خلاص؟ سامر بحكي لنا XY axis. شو بتطلع على XY axis سامر؟ احكي لي. Maybe unmute yourself or try to unmute yourself apparently. Okay. No mic. Okay. No problem, Samir. Okay, let me show you exactly how we measure oscillations. طبعا mathematically speaking, احنا مشان to detect oscillations and try to understand how oscillations happen, بنحول اللي انتم شايفينه قدامكم هذا ال EEG recording من التايم سيريز، شيء هذا بنسميه تايم سيريز. اوكي، presentation بنحوله لل الفريكونسي باور دومين. كيف يعني؟ يعني أنا هون بطلع على هاي الامبليتيودز up and down up and down up and down. alright، بس مشان أنا أشوف كم قوة how frequent is the 0.5 to 2 Hertz wave، بدي أحول هذا الشكل لشكل مختلف اللي بيجي بيحكي لي على الإكس أكسس سامر هاي الاوسيليشن ويف مش ويف لينث عفوا frequency. وعلى الواي اكسس is the power. مشان هيك نعمل شيء بنسميه you can read about it if you're interested. مش جزء من النقاش اليوم. بسميه fast Fourier transform, mathematical equation that allows you to transform a time series into the what we call the frequency power or the power domain basically in this kind of context. Okay, so لكن manually بشكل يدوي هون شو ممكن نعمل. شايفين هون هذه this 1 second plot here. هاي بتفرجينا كم طول الثانية على ال EEG recording. فبناخذ هذه ال 1 second وبنعد كم peak. So بناء على هذا الكلام ناخذ هذه ال 1 second نعد كم peak عندنا هون 1 and 2. Okay, within 1 second. All right. So بناء عليه we have 2 peaks. إذا شو الفريكونسي؟ 2 peaks per second, 2 hertz. Got it? So this is basically how you calculate these frequencies on the EEG. لما بعرفش إذا أخذتوا اللكتشر تبعت what is it called? Epilepsy and how you actually work on the EEG, how you read the EEG, and so on and so forth. If not, then actually this is how you read the EEG. باختصار. But professionally, it's a very different topic لأنه you'll need to do a lot of stuff before you can read the EEG, and then actually based on that you can start to learn how to work on the EEG. على كل هي رنا بتحكي لي إنه this is the first physiology lecture. Okay, I understand. So بناء على هذا الكلام هي عندكم you have an extra bit of information that would actually allow you to do well inshallah in the lecture related to EEG and epilepsy and so on. طيب ممتاز. خلينا نرجع let's go back to the discussion of sleep. So this is how you detect fast or slow oscillations on an EEG recording. إذا اتفقنا إنه stage 1 is shallow sleep. As you can see بين ال wakefulness وال shallow sleep stage 1 you don't see a lot of difference. Okay. طيب كم نسبة ال REM sleep وال non-REM sleep من النوم. This is actually another important piece of information. It is said that actually it's almost 25% for REM sleep, 25% for the deep sleep, and 50% for these stages 1, 2. Okay? إذا كمان مرة 75% non-REM sleep, 25% REM sleep. All right? مسألة مهمة جدا في sleep architecture as well if you take a look at it. So again, we said from wakefulness to non-REM sleep, we descend until we get to the deepest, and we ascend back. Okay? Stage 4, stage 3, stage 2, stage 1, REM sleep. Okay? And ultimately, you go the cycle again. All right? Which is what we call the ultradian rhythm. بس لاحظوا مسألة مهمة هنا إنه ال REM sleep it actually increases in length. بزيد طول المدة اللي بنقضيها في الREM sleep as we progress through the night. All right? بناء على بالإضافة لهذا الكلام the more we go through the night, okay? رغد yes 25% REM sleep. Yeah. Actually يعني more or less to some extent. There is a range actually that people use for REM sleep. يعني you can say between the National Sleep Foundation says anything above 10% to I think almost 35% is considered within the normal range of REM sleep. But it's very very individual in terms of the percentages. But generally speaking, 25%, 75% for non-REM. With non-REM, 50% of these are actually in the kind of stage 1, stage 2, shallow and stage 2 sleep. And then the deep is 25% as well. Okay? So this is how you should think about it. ولكن نرجع للكلام على architecture. Again, as we progress through the night, REM sleep becomes longer in period, and we don't go deeper in the non-REM sleep. So REM sleep becomes longer in duration, while non-REM sleep becomes shallower until we get to the point where we can descend the non-REM sleep and ascend and go back to wakefulness. طب شو بيميز الwakefulness من non-REM sleep عن REM sleep؟ is basically a lot of people say that if you wake up during REM sleep, you'll be able to remember what you were dreaming. So it gives you vivid dreams in this kind of context. We'll talk a little bit more about these dreams and what happens in this kind of context, and night terrors, and basically nightmares, and so on and so forth as we progress through the lecture. طيب إذا كمان مرة نراجع شو اللي بصير في الREM, non-REM and the different stages. إذا في ال EOG, as you can see, REM sleep, complete shutdown the muscles, okay, of the eye in particular, all right, and non-REM sleep, عفوا. And in REM sleep, we start having particular rapid eye movements in this kind of regard. We'll talk about it in a second. ليش بصير هذا الكلام as well in terms of the neural circuitry. بينما في non-REM sleep, we see just very, very, very slight ocular activity or eye movements, as you can see here. إمتى بصير toward the end of the REM sleep aspect of the architecture. The head movement goes significantly down again as we progress from shallow to deep sleep. It's just so Sajja is asking, يعني بخلال النوم بنروح بالترتيب من non-REM to REM. Best one cycle? No. As you can see here, Sajja, multiple cycles, you know. شايفي هنا, we can count this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, 5 cycles. بالعادة كل cycle منهم it goes up to 1.5 hours, 90 minutes. Okay. بس شفنا كيف انه الريم سليب بزيد باخر الليل, فبالتالي هذا الكلام بيكون على حساب النون ريم سليب, alright. فكانه الالتريديان ريذم السايكل فيكست, بينما الكومبوننتس تبعتها بتغير طولها, alright. So اذا نون ريم بعدين ريم, نون ريم بعدين ريم. طبعا النون ريم you go stage 1 2 3 4 4 3 2 1 then REM, okay. وبعدين ننزل كمان مرة 1 2 3 4 4 3 2 1 REM and so on and so forth. ممكن إشي يتخلل هذه السايكل اللي هو wakefulness, بيسموه في السليب ساينس or sleep medicine بيسموه WASO, wakefulness after sleep onset. And actually as long as you have 3 or less wakefulness after sleep onset episodes, that's considered to be normal, all right. So you can wake up during the night, especially during the REM bouts, and then go back to sleep. That's normal as well. That's not a lot of them. Okay, let me see. Somebody is asking a question. Let me see here. Was it Ali, I think? If Ali has a question, please go ahead and raise your hand again so that I can unmute you. All right. مسألة مهمة جدا as well in terms of the heart rate. As you can see, goes down with non-REM sleep, then goes up with REM sleep. Non-REM, low heart rate, okay? Especially the deepest parts. REM sleep, close to wakefulness. All right? So that's also important. And يعني فكروا في الREM sleep as wakefulness minus muscle tone. All right? Wakefulness minus muscle tone. This is REM sleep. It's a little bit different than shallow sleep. And shallow sleep, you still have the ability to move your muscles. And that's actually what we will talk about as well. Respiratory rate, basically everything goes down in non-REM sleep, as you think about it. In REM sleep, everything is close to the wakefulness levels, except for muscle tone. Muscle tone is completely abolished, or almost completely abolished, except for ocular muscles. All right? اتفقنا عليها هذه؟ ممتاز. And as you can see here, Misk is asking why and how sleepwalking occur among kids. Excellent question. So basically, what do you think? During a stage بيحصل if we're talking about sleepwalking, would it happen during REM ولا non-REM sleep?
Non-REM.
Non-REM. في حدا هي أدهم can talk now. So basically, if you want to unmute yourself, you can. You should be able to unmute yourself. So apparently it should be during non-REM لأنه الREM عندنا complete abolishment of muscular activity, okay? And then basically, based on that, we would consider إنه this kind of loss of function is related to which is what we call sleepwalking, is related to acting on particular states that happen in the in the sleep, that actually we call there's a lot of research on this particular aspect of why sleep is important, because it's actually how we consolidate our memories. فإذا الطفل صغير خاصة, they're learning a lot of motor skills and they're learning a lot of things during the day, and then they go to sleep. حتى بيجوز تشوفوا عند ال new babies and newborns, there is something that we call hyper or excessive stimulation. When the baby is excessively stimulated, they wake up crying at night. And basically, during their sleep, they're reprocessing everything. فمسك, the answer to this is maybe the kid during that particular night, if it's an isolated, first of all, if it's an isolated episode, it's not a problem. It happens. It happens with everybody. But if it becomes something that is frequent, then yeah, there should be some EEG studies. There should be some what we call PSG, polysomnography studies, in order to understand the sleep architecture, to see what is actually happening. Maybe these little guys who are sleepwalkers have particular deficiencies in one of these non-REM stages that actually allows for this to happen. But there is no clear pathology, sleep pathology related to sleepwalking so far. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. Saja is asking, is growth hormone secreted in delta wave? I honestly don't know. And then, but you tell me if you know that. نتعلم منك يا سجن. So I'm not sure about that. Okay. Let's see here. So let's talk a little bit about circadian ultradian rhythms. Oh my God, it's already 2:36, so we'll need to ramp this up quickly in order just to make sure that we cover all of the topics that we want to talk about. Okay, circadian rhythm, very simple, 24-hour period. اللي هو what we call the biological clock. And the biological clock is regulated by this very small set of cells in what we call the suprachiasmatic nucleus, is SCN, all right? And then basically, based on this suprachiasmatic nucleus regulation of activity, we see this kind of wave shape that you see in the sleep. And based on that, in the suprachiasmatic, what is the suprachiasmatic nucleus? It's anterior and ventral in the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is where the suprachiasmatic nucleus is regulated. Saja, now that you speak about it, this is actually where it matters in terms of the growth hormone and many other hormone secretions. Actually, it's actually this kind of circadian rhythm that regulates that a lot of the times. But I'm not sure specifically about growth hormone. You can search it and tell us next time. So بناء على هذا الكلام في عندنا تنظيم architecture of the sleep based on this 24-hour rhythm, okay, or oscillation that happens. And then كيف عرفنا إنه هذا الكلام مهم? By studying people who are isolated, confined in spaces without external stimuli. They use actually a German term to use to describe what we talk about here. Somewhat Zeitgebers. Okay, Zeitgebers. Zeit is time in German. Okay, and things that set time. Yani. All right. So what are things that set time? المفروض أخذتوا هذا الكلام في الفيجوال system. What is it that sets our biological clocks? Light. So light is one of the most important factors in terms of setting what we call the circadian rhythm. And based on that, if we do the following experiment, شوفوا هاي الإكسبيرمنت هنا. It's basically somebody who was put in a bunker that has no, with no access to light, no access to interaction with people, cannot tell the time, and so on and so forth. for almost 24, 25 days. أول 3 أيام, the person was actually allowed access to light in day and night. You could tell the day and night. But after that, he or she actually stopped having access to light, and you can see the circadian rhythm is drifting. You see, it becomes what we call out of phase. When they're re-exposed to light, there is a reset in the circadian rhythm, as you can see here. Okay? شوفوا بس الموضوع مش فيما يخص the circadian rhythms and basically and the sleep wakefulness cycle is not just about when it happens in the night or day, it's how long it is. All right? So زي ما انتم شايفين اول يومين تخربش النوم تبعه, صار نومه اطول, بعدين صار نومه اقل, بعدين صار اطول من العادة, you see? And then ultimately it got a little bit, when the person was re-exposed to light, became a little bit longer. Then actually it was reset to follow the day-night regulations that are provided by light. Okay, and again, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is the most important, basically component of regulating, this particular function. We'll talk a little bit about the genetics. I'm not going to get into the details of that because we have multiple genes that regulate the circadian rhythm, but we'll discuss that in a few minutes. طب إذا شو اللي بصير هون؟ إذا أنا عندي circadian rhythm function and sleep function. They call them actually process S, sleep, and process C, circadian rhythm. And as you can see here, من ساعة ما يصحى الواحد, السليب deficit ببلش يزيد لحد ما نوصل للمرحلة إنه you cannot really fight that sleep deficit or sleep debt much, therefore you fall asleep. And then actually this is in sync عادة مع نفس التوقيت اللي بصير فيه ال circadian rhythm. بس the circadian rhythm does not build up. All right? طبعا as you can see here, a lot of people use circadian rhythm in a way so that they can actually model alertness. إذا أنتم يعني كمية الانتباه, كمية الفوكس اللي عند الشخص زي كمية الفوكس اللي عندكم حاليا basically بعد اليوم الطويل هذا. So I would actually imagine that your alertness والصيام and so on is significantly going down now with the dehydration and so on. And early in the morning it was high. It goes up, and then starts going down until the kind of decline in alertness meets with the deficit, with the high deficit of sleep. Therefore, you fall asleep. Okay. And then based on that, you can try to understand the interplay between these, process C and process S aspect of things. All right. A lot of people say, actually, I have some research going on that relates to this, what we call the sleep deficit, that actually serotonin is very important for it. And in this kind of context, we'll talk a little bit about this. Okay, Samir is asking, coma patient has the same EEG as normal sleeping person? The answer is not necessarily. Depends on what kind of coma are we talking about. Is it due to an injury, brain injury? So coma comes in different flavors, Samir, all right? And Firas, magnetic hypnosis goes, I have no idea, to tell you the truth. So basically, this is something that you can search. I don't know. I don't think there's any scientific basis for how hypnosis happens, or if it happens. So this is something I can't, I don't have an answer for, to tell you the truth, because a lot of people actually even doubt that it exists. It does happen. It's more of what people call a delusion or a hallucination. All right. على كل. So based on this understanding of process C and process S, نفترض إنه أنا بدي أجي, and actually I don't want to sleep for basically 2 days. Then process C is going to continue uninterrupted. مظبوط؟ اللي هي alertness related. Okay, circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is going to continue. It's not going to get affected. لأنه it has a very, excuse me, it has a very different kind of physiology to it. بينما the process S is going to continue building up, and the sleep deficit will need to be fulfilled before I can go back to resetting basically my process S. All right. So that's actually why it's really important to know about these particular processes and to know about what we call sleep debt or sleep deficit, because it keeps building up. That's actually why people die if they don't sleep for a particular number of days. Okay? Because the deficits start interfering with other bodily functions, and you basically cannot maintain it. All right? So that being said, how do you maintain the circadian, the process C here? How do we maintain it? It's actually we can thank the Drosophila, the fruit fly, for that, because it allowed for a lot of studies that happened in this particular aspect. And there is a combination of genes and proteins, okay? So the first that was discovered is called the period gene. There's the clock gene, there is the BMAL1 gene, and there is the cryptochrome gene. All right? So basically, these are, this is what people call heterodimers that, some of them combine to each other, and then they wait for the buildup of another actually a component of the other genes. Basically, that actually, in order to happen, then it does self-suppression. I'm not going to explain it in detail here because I don't think you need it in particular here. بس اللي بدي اياكم تعرفوا انه basically there's a very tightly regulated genetic component and genetic and proteomic component in the SCN that regulates how circadian rhythm happens. And based on that, you get this kind of sine wave of the activity. They bind to each other, builds up until it gets to a particular stage, and then it starts suppressing itself لحد ما توصل للترف, وبعدين it starts all over again. Okay? So similar to what we saw with the circadian rhythm aspect of it. Okay? طيب. What controls the ultradian rhythm اللي هو اللي احنا بنحكي عنه اللي هو REM non-REM sleep? Very simple. In this kind of context, basically Magon and Muratsi discovered that actually it's controlled by what we call the ascending activating system. Ascending شو يعني? It's entering the brain. Okay, it's an afferent pathway that enters the brain, and therefore, if you interfere with this particular pathway, if you inject something inside of it or you cut it, then you don't get you cannot maintain wakefulness. All right? So maintaining wakefulness is regulated by this, what we call the ascending activating system. Okay? Or what people call the reticular activating system in general. طبعا there are significant connections between the reticular activating system and the hypothalamus, multiple nuclei of the hypothalamus, as well as other parts of the brainstem. So we know it's not just simple pathway that actually regulates sleep or regulates entrance of REM. And it has been shown in experiments that if you inject what we call carbachol in the ascending activating system, you can induce REM-like states. So if I want to induce something that is REM-like, you need to inhibit the reticular activating system. شو يعني induce REM-like state? You literally cause atonia. Okay, atonia, except in the ocular muscles, as we discussed. All right. A lot of people say that actually acetylcholine is very important for this. And as you can see here, we have the concept of what we call REM on, okay, and REM off cells. So this is actually a comparison between serotonergic neurons and cholinergic neurons. So apparently, as you can see here, if you look at this figure, cholinergic neurons, okay, so Haib is asking, what would you consider as a REM-like state? As we discussed, what is REM? REM is the sleep stage where you're not awake, okay? And your bodily functions are similar to some extent to the wakefulness, but you have atonia, fish muscle movement, إلا في الأوcular muscles. This is REM-like state. Again, REM, it's very important. And this is very different from non-REM. Non-REM, we don't have eye movement or rapid eye movement, I'm sorry, but we have a little bit of muscular activity. For REM, abolishment completely, all right? So that's actually extremely important. It is actually, it is, to some extent, it is sleep paralysis, all right? It is paralysis. But sleep paralysis has a little bit different pathology. We'll talk about it في the second part of the lecture, okay? So yes, it's, physiologically it's similar. So واحد منهم ascending واحد descending neurons. We'll talk about it in a second. And based on that, we have, so what controls the initiation of REM or the entrance into the REM stage? A lot of people say it's acetylcholine in the brainstem, or basically the different nuclei of acetylcholine that happen to be existing there. And based on that, we call them REM on cells. They turn on during REM sleep. بينما serotonin is called REM off cells. They ramp up at the end of REM and then actually go down during non-REM sleep. Okay? So based on that, we know now that there is REM on and REM off cells in the central nervous system. And it's quite simple. Acetylcholine is REM on, serotonin and potentially even dopamine is REM off. Okay? And actually, they give you other examples here, histaminergic and noradrenergic cells as well. So noradrenaline, histamine, and even dopamine, actually. They're considered to be REM off cells. All right? Okay. Let's see. Do we have more to talk about here? This is actually discussing the slow wave oscillations. Let's stop here so that you guys take like a 10-minute break. And we'll come back at the beginning of the hour so that we can resume the discussion related to how these oscillations happen, how they're generated in REM and non-REM sleep, and how to understand how the concepts happen, and basically talk a little bit about age and sleep, also talk about species and sleep, and so serotonin, norepinephrine, histamine, dopamine, okay, are REM off. They don't control REM off. They are REM off neurons. Yani, they're off during REM, and they ramp up at the end of the stage. All right? And then at that point, we'll talk about sleep disorders. All right? Any questions so far? No questions? Apparently, Saja is asking, مرضى الاكتئاب اللي عندهم نقص بالسيروتونين بيشبعوش نوم. Well, that's actually something that is related to so خلينا نفكر فيها من ناحية so سجا citrulline is a medication that we call SSRI. Okay, so we're talking about serotonin. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that is regulated to some extent by SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. شو اللي بيعملوا ال SSRIs? They prevent the reuptake of serotonin. All right, so they block what we call the SERT, the serotonin transporter, in order to prevent serotonin from being uptaken from the synapse. Therefore, they increase the concentration of serotonin. فبناء على هذا الكلام، إذا أنا عندي higher concentration of serotonin بناء على هذا الفكر, then people should be more in non-REM ولا REM. المفروض إنه basically they will start non-REM more frequently, right? Because they have more accumulation of serotonin in this kind of context. بس مش بالضرورة له علاقة في الشبع من النوم, you see, which is quite a different concept here. اللي له علاقة في sleep deficit or the sleep debt that we're talking about there. Okay? So these are things that اللي هو restfulness during sleep. How restful is your sleep? So these are different concepts. مش بالضرورة لهم علاقة transition between REM and non-REM. ممكن له علاقة في how much deep sleep is the person getting. هلا معروف مثلا عن serotonin reuptake inhibitors, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they knock out REM sleep. If you actually look at EEGs of and EOGs of individuals on SSRIs, you will notice that actually they don't have what we characterize as REM sleep. All right. So that being said, maybe that's actually what happens there, but nobody really knows specifically. Okay. Somebody else raised their hand, I think, or maybe not. Anyways, if you have any other questions, we can answer after the break. So let's meet back here in 10 minutes, sharp. Basically, your time now, it's now your time at 3:05. Let's meet at 3:05 p.m. so that we can continue discussing the topic and learn more about sleep disorders and talk a little bit about how EEG and oscillations are generated when we're talking about sleep. How does this happen? كمان راح تتعلم عن هذا الكلام أكثر خلال خلال الكورس الفيزيولوجي إن شاء الله من تخيل الدكتور حاتم راح يعطيكم هذه المحاضرة. Okay, we'll see you guys in a bit. 10 minutes. Okay, so let's resume. Before we start, any questions, Jama? Again, anybody has any questions? Okay, so how do we get what we call the slow wave oscillations, or the K complexes or the spindles that we see in the EEG or on the EEG when we're examining these different stages of sleep? So basically, this is more of an interplay that happens between cortical circuits and thalamic circuits. How do we know that? So we do what is called in vitro physiology, and the in vitro physiology is this technique. We actually extract the brain of a rat or a mouse um, through something that we call perfusion. We replace the blood with a fluid that is similar to CSF. So once we get the blood out of the brain is still basically alive. The cells are alive, and we cut slices in the brain, and using particular anatomical landmarks, we take the particular slice of interest to us. لو كانت مثلا cortex, which cortex are we talking about? Are we talking about the visual cortex? Are we talking about the prefrontal cortex? Similar to the human as well, in the rat and mouse. We take that slice and we do this kind of what we call cell patching. So you go under the microscope and start looking for these cells. And زي ما انتم شايفين هون, these are electrodes that we insert inside the cell in order to record intracellular activity. So احنا بنحط هاي something like a wire or a small pipette, بيعتمد شو what you want to do as well. And you stick it inside the cell body or inside the axon or inside the dendrites, depending on where you want to record. أو بتحطوها خارج حدود الخلية العصبية in order to record what we call the extracellular activity. Okay? So once we do this in the cortex, we take this kind of cortical slice and we start recording. You can see actually during this particular phase, you can see under the slice recording circumstances, cortical cells are capable of generating what we call slow wave oscillations. So in one way or another, we understand non-REM to some extent, the aspect of generating these slow wave oscillations comes from the cortex. Okay? And this is actually shown, as you can see here. We call it slow wave because of the frequency that I just showed you, and how many peaks, how many. In this kind of case, it's not the peaks. It's basically what we call the action potentials that are actually really important that we count, and is converted to what we call the firing rate of the neurons. لما نحط multiple neurons on top of each other, we see what we call the population activity. Okay, in this kind of regard. الspindle wave, on the other hand, it comes from a different circuit. Even slow wave activity during non-REM comes from the cortex. The spindle waves and the K complexes, or the sleep spindles, come from a different aspect of activity that happens in thalamic cells, what we call thalamocortical cells. All right? And basically, in both cases, these are glutamatergic cells, all right? Either the projection cells, the pyramidal cells in the cortex, or the projection cells in the. Let me see. There's a question. Oh, maybe not a question. Okay. And the projection cells in in what is it called, in the projection cells in the cortex and the thalamocortical cells. Okay, so it's all about excitation. All right, glutamatergic, glutamate. بس شو اللي بصير هون عندنا في الثالاموس؟ what happens is there are two firing phases, or two firing settings for the thalamic neurons, if I may call them. During wakefulness, the thalamic neurons, fire regularly. There is this kind of tonic activity that happens. It goes up to like 40 hertz, 40 مرة في الثانية maximum. And then actually, because they're not hyperpolarized, when you fall asleep, the firing pattern changes drastically. And now there's this state of hyperpolarization brain-wise is going to hyperpolarize these thalamic cells. It's going to activate a particular current that we call IH, the current of hyperpolarization, they call it. And this leads the cell into what we call bursting activity. And this bursting activity is this very high firing rate of these thalamic cells that leads to what we call sleep spindles. Even sleep spindle comes from the thalamus. Slow wave comes from the cortex. وطبعا الثالاموس sends huge projections to the cortex, and the cortex sends projections to the thalamus. But I want you to know where these things are initiated, and ultimately you will see something related to then what we call absence seizures is related to the thalamus, thalamocortical networks, as opposed to tonic-clonic seizures. هتشوف هذا الكلام في الليكتشر تبعت اللي لها علاقة في epilepsy. All right. Another thing that you need to actually kind of understand in this figure is vasopressin, the hormone, the chemical, is actually, it significantly helps in maintaining what we call the circadian rhythm. So it's not just important for regulating kidney function, but also important for regulating circadian rhythm. All right. And apparently everything is related to water excretion in this kind of context. So something just like an isolated piece of information for you to know. طيب, what happens with age? Do we sleep more or sleep less? So Ragad is saying we sleep less. طيب, less what, Ragad? Less REM. هلا بنعرف شو أجزاء السليب. Less REM ولا less non-REM ولا less duration. So basically خلينا نتفق على the following terminology for sleep. We have total sleep duration, اللي هو from falling asleep to waking up. Okay. We have deep sleep, which is the duration of sleep that is in stage 3, stage 4 of non-REM sleep. There's the rest of non-REM sleep, which is on the shallow side of sleep, and there is REM sleep. اللي منكم عنده smartwatch, Apple Watch or any of these watches, it actually measures deep sleep, it measures REM sleep, it measures total sleep duration. All right. إذا شو اللي بقل عندي؟ بقل sleep duration ولا بقل REM sleep ولا بقل deep sleep ولا بقل shallow sleep? What really goes wrong? Or maybe not wrong, I'm sorry. What changes with age? What do you think? Or maybe not, let's not ask about age. When babies are born, predominantly, what's their sleep composed of? Deep sleep, REM sleep? What do you think? So Sohaib is saying, yes, REM sleep, that's correct. Let's take a look, actually. So this is the figure that shows you what happens and how sleep actually is formed. Surprisingly, it starts actually manifesting as early as a few months into conception. So don't be surprised that actually, fetuses, and are actually, they fall asleep, and mostly REM sleep, until midway through pregnancy. And then non-REM sleep starts kicking in. And actually, non-REM sleep is basically the shallow aspect of it. And then deep sleep starts manifesting in newborns around 6 to 9 months. All right. So basically, and that's why babies are equipped to wake up every 3 hours, particularly for feeding, because their stomachs are really small. They cannot hold on to the food or their mother's milk in this kind of context. All right, and they sleep a lot in the beginning, up to 18 hours or 20 hours a day. And then, as you can see, the wakefulness starts increasing, and that's at the expense of REM sleep. بينما non-REM sleep increases and plateaus at around 1 year of age. بس بعد 1 year of age, as you can see, between like once you turn 18 or 20 until average age of death, which is 70 something, or much less these days. Basically, you can see that actually REM sleep becomes less and non-REM sleep becomes less. So we're talking about the total duration. Total duration is reduced. Okay? What's actually really important as well is that deep sleep in particular, with age, especially people above 60 or above 45, it becomes much more pronounced, the loss of deep sleep in this kind of context. So try to understand this. These are some kind of buzzwords, important information that you need to know. Early in age, it's REM sleep. Later is non-REM sleep. Later is deep sleep of the REM sleep. And then as we move forward, after 20 years of age, or even 10 years of age, basically, that starts going down. The sleep, the amount of sleep that is required is less. Total sleep, and this affects both REM and non-REM. But at the same time, there are particular architectural aspects of sleep that are affected by age. Any questions about that? That's important. Please remember this so that you don't mistakenly diagnose anybody with an older age with a sleep disorder. Okay, let's talk about sleep disorders now, and I think that's a very important discussion so that you know how these things are, manifested, how to manage them, how to think about them, and how to properly, diagnose them as you start moving to your clinical years. طبعا sleep health is extremely important. It's like a pillar of having health elsewhere in other domains of health. If you have good sleep health, you have good central nervous system health, you have good cardiac health, you have good muscle health, you have good mental health. So basically, sleep health is really central in a lot of these aspects of sleep, and you should always try to maintain or focus on sleep health in any patient that you see as you progress toward your medical career. طيب, the most common of sleep disorders is what we call insomnia. Insomnia is basically one type of sleep disorder that has to do with disrupted sleep. What forms are we talking about in terms of disrupted sleep? So insomnia could be at the initiation of sleep problem. Okay, you cannot fall asleep. Another way of presenting insomnia is you cannot maintain sleep and you get shorter sleep duration. And the third form of insomnia is when you get disrupted sleep, or what we call fragmented sleep. Okay, so it comes in multiple forms. It's the most common, and basically you can see this in medical students in particular because they consume a lot of caffeine. All right, and that's actually why it's really important. One of the most important regulators of sleep is exposure to these extra bodily chemicals. In particular, talking about caffeine and alcohol. People think, especially in Western cultures, that actually alcohol helps people to sleep. It doesn't. Initially, it does because it's a depressant, but it causes significant sleep disruptions during the night, and it causes significant sleep problems down the line. So caffeine the same. It's very important when you see somebody who has an insomnia or a sleep problem. The first question to ask: what is the last caffeine dose you take per day? If it's within 4 to 6 hours before sleep, then they're good. If not, then actually you should tell them that the first thing they should do in order to get rid of their insomnia is to regulate caffeine, not to drink caffeine, at least 4 hours, or preferably 10 hours actually before sleep, if they can. So there are multiple frameworks to regulate this aspect of things. Okay, multiple medications are also used. GABA in particular, GABA agonists or GABA facilitators. A lot of معرفش إذا أخذتوا البنزودايازepines ولا لا. This is actually one of the types of medications. Antihistamines is another type of medication that we use in order to help people fall asleep in this kind of context. برضو, like non-pharmacological treatment is extremely important, as I said. Regulating caffeine intake, alcohol intake in this particular aspect is extremely key. Regular wake up times, regular falling asleep and wake up times, consistent sleep, sleep cycle times is extremely important. Making sure that you work on your sleep environment, a little bit of a colder sleep ambience, sleep environment also helps a lot. And then, to some extent, these are actually the things that you can consider that are related to insomnia. All right. Mental health related في بعض الناس, it's a pattern, but it's not very consistent. That initiation of sleep insomnia is related to anxiety, and maintenance of sleep insomnia is related to depression. يعني الناس اللي ما بيعرفوا يناموا ببلشوا النوم, okay, they have شو بنسميه توتر, مش بالضرورة مرض ولكن توتر, okay. والناس اللي ما بيقدروا يستمروا في النوم خلال الليل لها واحد من أعراض الاكتئاب. كمان مرة مش اكتئاب سريري لكن أعراض الاكتئاب, okay, مش بالضرورة اكتئاب سريري يشخص ويعالج. ف these are ways to kind of do that. Any questions about insomnia? It's a very important topic. This is the most common sleep disruption. You should know that. You should look for it. You should look for its effect on other systems if you see a patient with it. Daytime sleepiness is another concept which is basically related to what we called alertness earlier. انتبهتوا كيف نحكي على alertness العلاقة في ال C process, circadian rhythm. And then ultimately it has to do with basically, many other sleeping disorders. Someone can insomnia, someone can sleep apnea, someone can narcolepsy, someone can restless leg syndrome, behavioral REM disorder, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that being said, it's extremely key not to look to kind of focus on the problem that you're trying to study, but to try to see if there are underlying causes related to the problem that you're trying to study. إذا في عندي daytime sleepiness, ببلش أسأل عن sleep, okay, and sleep fragmentation and sleep architecture and sleep habits in this kind of regard. And actually, something in medicine that is well known is حاولوا تتذكروا هذه, it's going to help you in your medical careers. Seeing uncommon symptoms of common disorders is much more common than seeing common symptoms of uncommon disorders. كيف يعني؟ إذا أنا بدي أشوف حدا عنده sleep disorder, sleep problem, it's more common to see uncommon presentation of insomnia, okay, as opposed to seeing common presentations of narcolepsy, which is uncommon. All right? So remember this. It is much more common to see uncommon presentations of common disorders as opposed to common presentations of uncommon disorders. مع الصيام إن شاء الله وصلت هذه basically. I hope so. But if not, think about it. If you have the recording, you can actually review it. All right. One last piece of information about daytime sleepiness is that they talk about the average 7 hour of sleep. Actually, if you look at the National Sleep Foundation numbers and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, it's more of like 6 to 10 hours. That's the normal. Normal range is 6 to 10 hours, okay? So anything like below 6 or above 10, there are cases of what we call hypersomnolence, which is basically excessive sleep. You see people in this kind of context. But it's not just 7 hours, okay? So people vary. And there is significant variability. Okay, the second disorder that we're going to talk about today. Before I move forward, any questions? Any questions in the chat, or you want to unmute yourself and talk? We'll be happy to receive that. Or stop me, guys. Okay, here's a question. So Sohaib is asking, is it just because uncommon presentation would stick out more, or you have to consider common symptoms would overlap between common disorders? No, it's uncommon presentations of common disorders is more common because common disorders are more common. Simple. You see? إذا أجى عندي واحد with a lymph node in the left side of the cheek, basically, or the left side of the TMJ. شو بتفكر tumor ولا tonsillitis? Tonsillitis. You see? It's not a tumor. Most commonly. All right? So that's actually how you think about it. All right, so let's talk about sleep apnea. من الاسم شو يعني sleep apnea؟ يلا جماعة بنكون more interactive so that we all have fun, not only you. So basically, would help me a lot to also stay alert and focused. No. Apnea is loss of breathing. Sleep apnea. Cessation of breathing during sleep. This is sleep apnea, all right? Exactly. So thank you, Sajja. So Sohaib was telling us it's inability to sleep. No, it's inability to breathe during sleep. طب شو اللي بصير عندي? And basically what we're talking about in this domain is that you're unable to breathe during sleep due to either central reasons, what we call central apnea, or obstructive reasons. Which then is telling us obstruction of the upper aura. Exactly. Thank you. So this is one of the causes of Wajdan, and the other is central. There is a central regulator, especially related to the CO2 sensors and basically the muscles, the respiratory muscles that could be affected, and apparently it leads to what we call sleep apnea. So it's either central CSA, central sleep apnea, or OSA, obstructive sleep apnea. Most common is obstructive sleep apnea. The most important cause of sleep apnea is, what do you think? Obesity. Exactly. Thank you, Ali. Exactly. Obesity, because ultimately you get the kind of like you can identify them, thick necks, okay, central obesity, um, um, mouth breathers, you see. And ultimately, you can also look at basically manifestations of insomnia and difficulty sleeping, daytime sleepiness. These are some of the symptoms that you see. High blood pressure, of course, all of these things come together. All right. And this is extremely important. How do we treat? How do we treat sleep apnea? إذا كان المشكلة عندنا is obstruction, we remove the obstruction. How do we remove the obstruction? We maintain. Well, Yasmin is telling lifestyle changes, of course, but at the long run, you know what I mean? Sahib says mouth guards. Yes, you can use mouth guards. Excellent, exactly. But what kind of mouth guard? It depends. And Salim is saying PAP, positive airway pressure. Exactly. This is actually the gold standard. You give the patient a mask with a breathing machine, okay, that actually keeps pumping air to keep the airway open, patent, okay? That's actually really important. So we call it CPAP. The machine is called CPAP, okay? Continuous positive airway pressure. And then actually في طبعا many other modifications to this. Currently, a lot of studies show that actually BiPAP, which is biphasic positive airway pressure, is much better actually than CPAP, depending on the patient and their needs. كمان مرة كل patient is a special individual, all right? So you have to be really careful into thinking about it. Antihistamine, well, antihistamine will make them sleepy, Sajja. But if we're talking about obstruction because of an anaphylactic shock or anaphylactic reaction, yes, antihistamines could help. But what we're talking about here is how can I maintain patentness in physically speaking, not just pharmacologically. Potentially antihistamines could help if there is an allergic reaction. If not, then actually you need to really literally physically maintain the patentness of the airway that we're talking about. Okay, so what happens when sleep apnea happens? Sleep apnea, because people stop breathing, CO2 is going to build up. And by building up of CO2, what you will see is that actually there is some kind of a startle response, an arousal response. لأنه زي تخيلوا حدا عم بنخنق حاليا, okay, because of the inability to breathe. And then based on that, the central nervous system is going to kick in with the autonomic nervous system, and actually not necessarily the person is not going to be awake, but they will just do rebound breathing as like, basically. And that's when you notice especially things related to snoring, okay? And you notice this a lot with patients with sleep apnea, that they snore a lot as well. And then it stops. So the apneic episode, then CO2 builds up, and then you hear that big, loud breath that they take in order to, kick that CO2 out and reconstitute the oxygen CO2 concentrations in the lungs. So now we know what apnea is, what are the types, what are the symptoms and signs, and basically how to look for it, how to think about it, how to treat it potentially. Okay. طبعا إذا كان central بال CPAP, you're supplying the patient as well with an oxygen tank, and this oxygen tank is gonna give continuous supply of oxygen. Therefore, the buildup of CO2 is not gonna be as bad. Therefore, you avoid these kind of arousal episodes that lead to the disrupted sleep and fragmented sleep. Okay. Any questions? Stop me, guys. If you have any questions, please do stop me. Like narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a very uncommon. It's not really, you don't see it a lot. Disorder, sleep disorder that happens in people. And it comes with 5 symptoms. And it's actually kind of a very disturbing sleep disorder. To some extent, you will see why. The most important symptom, زي ما انتم شايفين حكينا على الانسomnia وحكينا على السليب ابنيا, وحاليا راح نحكي عن narcolepsy. All of them come with daytime sleepiness. So when you see daytime sleepiness, dig deeper, think about it. And again, common is more common, okay? So, but that being said, you will see people getting sleep attacks. They fall asleep during the day. And it's not because, they want to sleep, they really can't resist it. All right. So that being said, so let's see here. This is actually, I skipped this. This is basically my apologies. This is sleep apnea episode, all right, where you see the period of apnea where the leg EMG completely disappears. There is cessation of movement, snoring stops, breathing stops, and then O2 levels start to plummet. They start to go down, actually. And if you see, like, I don't think there's a CO2 measure here, but if you see CO2, it starts actually kind of climbing up. So as you can see here, the even eye movement stuff. So basically complete cessation of activity in this apnea event. And basically, this is how we detect it on, EEG, EMG, and basically the mics related to when you do a sleep study in terms of the apnea aspect of it. And then the arousal terminates the apnea. As you can see here, muscle activity goes back on, breathing is restored, and the heart rate is not slowed down as well. And then you get a little bit of increase in the O2 levels. All right. So back to narcolepsy. As I said, the first symptom is daytime sleepiness and sleep attacks. And basically, this is very common. طيب, من ناحية الpathology, what really happens in narcolepsy? Let's actually take a look. This is normal sleep onset in A, okay? You can see the EEG, EOG, as well as the EMG. Then you look at the narcoleptic patient. What's the difference? مين شايف في فرق هنا؟ Who wants to tell me what's the difference? Anybody, please unmute yourself and start talking if you want. Or in the chat, whatever you prefer. Okay, so basically what we're seeing. Okay, آخر فرصة. All right. Disruption of the circadian sleep-wake rhythm, Wajdan is telling us. What do you mean by that, Wajdan? What do you see on the reading, on the EEG, on the EMG, on the EOG? That's actually, guys, be objective. And actually, that's extremely important. Be evidence-based. That's the best, absolutely the best, service that you can give to your patients. When you see something, show it to them so that they believe you. They trust what you're telling them. So based on that, let me show you what I'm talking about here. خلينا نطلع على الاي اي جي. شايفين اي مشكله في الاي اي جي؟ انا مش شايف كثير شيء واضح يعني, to tell you the truth. It's not that big difference لانه حتى لما احنا when we fall asleep there aren't a lot of big differences between the the EEG aspects between shallow sleep and wakefulness مثل ما اتفقنا. ولكن look at the EOG. So the EOG in normal sleep, as you can see here, all right, it goes into kind of this sine wave, slow wave activity. So it's not rapid. It's not rapid eye movement. It's slowly moving in terms of the eye movement. بس مقارنة في in narcoleptics, you see what's happening? We're starting rapid eye movement. إذا شو اللي صار هنا؟ بدل ما أدخل من wakefulness على stage 1 non-REM sleep, دخلت من wakefulness على REM sleep. You see? So كل sleep architecture تغير عندي في narcolepsy. So what's the problem in narcolepsy? The major problem is that the patient enters from wakefulness into REM sleep. احنا اتفقنا كيف بتصير الترتيب. Wakefulness, non-REM, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, then we climb up again, stage 4, 3, 2, 1, and then REM sleep. Then again, back into non-REM sleep, climb down, climb up, and then REM sleep. مظبوط؟ بس احنا شو اللي شايفينه؟ شايفينه من wakefulness, we go directly into REM sleep. بعدين تتغير the stages. So that being said, there's something wrong in this kind of way of looking at this. بسبب هاي الأمور بصير عندنا sleep architecture is very different, and then we see the different symptoms of narcolepsy. I like to kind of show you where they are in the chapter. Okay, so this is the first, as you can see, the daytime sleepiness and these sleep attacks. The second is what we refer to as cataplexy. Okay, and actually it's one of the most common symptoms of narcolepsy. It's related usually to emotional expression. When there is emotional expression, you lose muscle tone. You lose muscle tone. كمان مرة شو sleep stage اللي we lose muscle tone فيها? REM sleep. Okay? So if somebody actually loses muscle tone in front of you and they feel that they're falling asleep, or you observe that they're falling asleep, that could be cataplexy. Could be as simple as vasovagal attack. By the way, I don't want you to kind of diagnose anybody who falls down as cataplexy, but it's not. And actually, it happens over a couple of seconds, and it's very scary to the patient. All right, and then ultimately, because consciousness is preserved in cataplexy, so something to remember, and they're awake and they know what's going on. They are unable to move themselves because they're atonic. ما في قدرة إنهم يحركوا العضلات تبعتهم. All right. So that being said, هذا هو الفرق بين الكاتابلكسي. راح نحكي عن شيء ثاني له علاقة في narcolepsy that is called, basically that we call sleep paralysis. I'm sorry, it's right here. Okay. So شو الفرق بين sleep paralysis cataplexy? Cataplexy happens during wakefulness. Okay. Sleep paralysis is when you're transitioning between sleep and wakefulness. All right. المسألة الأولى, it's not initiated by emotional reactions or interactions, as in cataplexy. All right, and it lasts much longer. Also, it's very, very, very scary to the patients, and because they can't move at all, they're fully awake, they're fully aware, and they can't move, and it's very frightening. Okay, إذا اتفقنا إنه في عندنا daytime sleepiness, sleep attacks, and cataplexy, and basically sleep paralysis. Cataplexy and sleep paralysis, they're similar, but their presentations are different. And basically, the third aspect of it is these kind of dream-like experiences that happen at the onset of sleep, what we call hypnagogic, okay, or hypnopompic at the end of sleep, at the offset of sleep. And these are hallucinations that actually people start kind of imagining things, and they're very bizarre and frightening. And then ultimately, they can come as sensations. They can come as particular dreams, and again, happens at the transitioning of sleep and wakefulness, or wakefulness and sleep. So either falling asleep, hypnagogic, or falling asleep, hypnopumping, or actually waking up from sleep, hypnopumping. Okay. Last is the most like one the final symptom is basically fragmented sleep or distributed nocturnal sleep. All right. And then basically that's actually what we meant by falling into REM sleep immediately after falling asleep. All right. So basically, in order to diagnose narcolepsy, we need daytime lapses into sleep and cataplexy, or a pattern of excessive daytime sleepiness, sleep paralysis, or the dreamlike activity, the hypnagogic or the hypnopumping hallucinations. All right, in this kind of context, a lot of people say that actually the development of narcolepsy is related to this particular protein. I'll show it to you here. Maybe it's down actually. I'm sorry. My alertness is starting to be affected actually. Is related to the loss of the production of the peptide that's called hypocretin in the hypothalamus. And as you can see, the difference between hypocretin producing cells in B and narcoleptic patient, where there are, like you see, these black dots are the actually hypocretin producing cells. You don't see them in a narcoleptic patient. And basically, it's not all the patient that you see these in, but and it's not always that these patients respond to hypocretin 1 or 2 treatments. And this is mainly genetic. طيب. What else are we going to discuss today? Restless leg syndrome. Restless leg syndrome, all right? And so basically, one more point I wanted to kind of mention about narcolepsy. It's related to, so if we're losing the muscle tone aspect, okay, then so في عندنا ascending reticular activating and descending reticular activating مظبوط. Then is in this kind of context, the inactivation of the descending, so ascending is going to maintain wakefulness, as we discussed earlier, and the descending is going to maintain the muscle tone. So cataplexy or sleep paralysis is going to deal with this kind of descending. So loss of inactivation, loss of, or inactivation of the descending while not asleep. Okay, هي cataplexy. So basically, what we do, what we see there is a descending pathway in the reticular activating system or the activating system is actually we lose control over it. That actually it shuts down, so leads to atonic attacks. بالمقابل فعندنا شيء اسمه REM behavior disorder. REM behavior disorder, I just want you to link the two because these are opposing things. Is basically when people wake up during REM sleep, all right, with muscular activity, basically, so you don't lose muscle tone during REM sleep. So شايفين الفرق؟ واحد you lose it when you're awake, which is what we call narcolepsy, and the other is that you don't lose tone and you become violent basically during REM sleep. So هذا بنسميه REM behavior disorder. The other is called narcolepsy. طيب شو الفرق بين هذا الكلام كله و restless leg syndrome? Restless leg syndrome is a sensation related disorder, and then actually you feel this during the night while you're resting in bed, that you want to move your legs, you want to touch your legs, basically you want to scratch your legs, and it doesn't go away. All right, that kind of sensation or feeling. A lot of people link this to actually development of subsequent neurological disorders such as Parkinson's disease. راح نحكي عنه شوي, okay? And then ultimately, some of these patients actually end up needing to move their legs for 10 or 20 seconds, as you can see here. And ultimately, it becomes very disruptive to sleep, and it becomes very disruptive to basically the sleep health related to maintaining proper sleep and not fragmented sleep. There are multiple ways of treating this as well. Benzodiazepines is one of the actually best treatments for this. Dopaminergic medications are one of the best treatments for this. So you see the link between Parkinson's and this. Restless leg syndrome. Parasomnias is a group of disorders. ذكرت واحدة منهم اللي هي REM behavior disorder. There are other aspects of them. The sleepwalking, sleep talking, night terrors, as well as REM sleep disorder. Basically, sleepwalking talking is basically it happens, and confusion and even night terrors mostly happen in children. And we're talking about non-REM sleep here, okay? Stages 3 and 4, deep sleep. And let me see if there is no figure, unfortunately, here. Maybe it's in the other textbook. And ultimately, you see that actually maybe they're walking around, but their speech is disturbed, they're incoherent, and therefore you can't try to reason with them. Sometimes even they can become violent, all right? And basically, when they wake up, they're in deep sleep. They're walking and moving around when they're deep, or talking when they're in deep sleep. So when they wake up, they have no recollection whatsoever of what happened, all right? Another important aspect of sleep disorders is what we call night terrors, and it happens in children, common in children. Actually, I think it's certainly much more 2 to 3%, but 2 to 3% if it's a consistent presentation there. And then basically, the child wakes up, they cry nonstop. Every time you try to console them, they cry even more. ليش؟ لأنهم they're in deep sleep. You see? So the way to go around this is to educate the parents not to interact with their kids, not to try to console them, not to try to actually kind of stop their crying. And they're not hearing you. You see, they're not going to be responsive in this kind of state. All right. And the child does not remember, and does not remember what's going on. As opposed to a nightmare, they will remember what happened. Okay, because ultimately, again, they're waking up in the middle of REM sleep potentially in this kind of context. Okay. All right. So that being said, I think we talked about REM sleep disorder. Another set of disorders that are related to the circadian rhythms. Some of them are genetic, where the circadian rhythm is out of phase. And then ultimately, you can start thinking about what happens. One example is what we call delayed sleep phase disorder. It happens in people who have particular problems with the cryptochrome gene. And again, you can look it up. It's up to you guys. في delayed, في advanced, okay, sleep phase disorder, things that are related to what we call your I'm trying to remember the name of the thing actually that I want to tell you about. Completely went blank. My energy is coming to an end, guys. Okay, so basically, this description of your circadian rhythm that allows you to see if somebody is a morning person, an afternoon person, or a late person, what we call night owls. And then ultimately, based on that, you can actually you can try to organize or actually categorize people accordingly. And then chronotypes. Actually, they call them chronotypes. So chronotypes is an actual questionnaire that you can fill up for people. and you can assess if that's a morning person ولا late riser ولا night owl. السهيري هدول الجماعة اللي بيسهروا بالليل who can actually. And then ultimately, based on the chronotype, you can identify if there is a circadian rhythm related sleep disorder or not in this kind of context. And basically, the way that we help these patients or these people with circadian rhythm problems is we try to retrain the circadian rhythm in a way. Again, a lot of them are lifestyle and habits related, and some of them need actual medical treatment in this kind of context. All right, so I think this comes to an end. Any questions? Inshallah, next times we'll have more control over the time so that we finish on time. I know that it's late during the day and maybe عندكم محاضرات قبلها بتكونوا تعبانين, I understand. So hopefully this will be more controlled and according to needs. Any questions? Okay, so if you have any question, just unmute yourself or just raise your hand and I'll unmute you guys. I'll share the lecture materials with Jihan so that she can share them with you. It's like a Dropbox folder you can actually access. And I'll put the recordings and I'll put any materials. You will see actually, let me see if I have something to show you here. Yeah, you'll see something like this, basic readings and additional readings. I put a few papers there for you guys to take a look at if you're interested. Things that are nice related to some of the discussions that we have. For example, let me show you here. This is about memory function of sleep. It's a really nice review. And this is about sleep and memory. This is about molecular mechanisms related to circadian rhythms. And this is actually about replays, how we store memories in a structure called the hippocampus during sleep by replaying the memories. So you can take a look at it. Feel free to read any of these papers that you want. بس مثل ما اتفقنا الإشي اللي مغطى في المحاضرة is actually what I'll be asking you about mainly, and I want you to read. Read any notes, أي تلخيصات بدكم إياها on the planet, I don't care, as long as you read something. All right? بس بفضل تقرأ الكتب. هدول actually these are really very nice textbooks. The one that I took this chapter from is called Principles of Neuroscience, and it's like the Bible of neuroscience. And basically yes فراس التسجيل راح يكون إن شاء الله in the same folder as the materials, so you can certainly find them there. And the other book that I use is called Neuroscience by so this is by Eric Kandel. Eric Kandel is actually the person who got the Nobel Prize in 2000 for some of the discoveries related to memory, and the other is called Pervez. So Pervez Neuroscience is the other textbook that I'll be using. Okay, guys. So if there are no other questions, we'll stop here. And we'll see you on Tuesday at, again, at 2 p.m. to talk about the basal ganglia. Assalamu alaikum.